bank perspective. The power of central banks over markets and economies was contained. Though I didn't know it then, I would be working with and analyzing central banks for the better part of the next 3 decades. I left Lehman shortly after that trip and took a position at Bear Stearns in London, at which I created the Financial Analytics Department. During my time there, the euro premiered as the official currency of the Eurozone. The Asian crisis struck. Bill Clinton was impeached. The Glass-Steagall Act, which had prohibited bank deposits from being used to fuel speculative activities within big banks, was repealed. Increasingly complex derivatives were sold to the portfolios of any entity with enough cash or credit to buy them, even if that credit came from the sellers of those derivatives. Returning to New York in 2000, I worked as a managing director at Goldman Sachs, where I was responsible for the analytics underlying a rapidly evolving product, credit derivatives. I also ran a SWAT team that hunted for white elephant transactions tailored especially for major financial clients and corporations. The internal pressures within the firm regarding that hunt were intense. Wall Street had become less focused on client risk as products became more complicated and lucrative. One senior manager advised me that, if I wanted to get ahead at Goldman, I had to make upper management my clients, not the external customers. That was a pivotal moment for me. Though a steady stream of internal politics at Goldman, on Wall Street, and in the corporate world at large is a constant presence, to have it so plainly spelled out stopped me cold. It was the kind of moment from which there is no turning back. It was friendly advice as well, but it just didn't sit well with me. Shortly after, the entire country was shattered by the events of 9/11. We each have our stories from those days, where we were, what went through our minds, how it changed us as people, as a nation. For me, those tense moments of walking up Broadway away from Wall Street, with the acrid debris-filled smoke of the Twin Towers in the air, was a last straw. I left Goldman Sachs, partly because life was too short, partly out of disgust at how citizens everywhere had become collateral damage and later hostages to the banking system. Since then, I've dedicated my life to exposing the intersections of money and power and deciphering the impact of the relationships between governments and central and private bankers on the citizens of the world. In 2004, I explored those post-1970s alliances in my first book, Other People's Money, The Corporate Mugging of America. In that thesis, I warned of the calamities that would ensue as a result of credit derivatives, then a tiny blip on the banking and business media radar. Although other analysts eventually reached similar conclusions, I was one of the first insiders who explained when, why, and how this crisis would unfold. What happened following the repeal of the bipartisan-passed 1933 Glass-Steagall Act in 1999 was unavoidable. As long as people's deposits remained fodder for reckless speculation, I wrote, the world was at risk. Indeed, a few years later, the U.S. economy collapsed, taking down markets and economies around the globe. Some people said banks weren't to blame. People who couldn't afford their mortgages were. But that's not a logical conclusion if you do the math and know how banks create and sell mortgages. The financial crisis began 3 years after my book came out and escalated through 2008. Those events led to my next book, It Takes a Pillage: Behind the Bonuses, Bailouts, and Backroom Deals from Washington to Wall Street. The book tapped into the psyche of Wall Street, revealing how the very structure of the financial system hinged on traders flocking to the next big bet, regardless of the stakes. In addition, the same people and families kept popping up, cycling through Wall Street and Washington. They influenced the economy beneath them from their loftier heights of status, private money, and public office, dismantling laws that stood